We got a bidet! Hey everybody, and welcome back for another video. In today's video, we are talking about the new Dungeons and Dragons movie, Honor Among Thieves. That's what it was called. Um, Very highly anticipated for ourselves. We recently, I would say it was during COVID, so 2020 is when we learned how to play Dungeons and Dragons. Thankfully, to one of our good friends, Jeff Powers, and through playing the game, it inspired us to go see the movie, and the movie was very, very good. So what we're going to do is we're going to tell you about what happened in the movie, and then we're going to talk about our thoughts, and then it's up to you whether you want to go see it or not. So Sarah is actually going to start us off with what happened. So what is going on in this movie?
So we start out with Edgin and Holga, right? And they're in prison. And they get taken to the council, I guess, is like a once a year thing to see if they are okay to be pardoned or not, if they're worthy. And Edgin's trying to give his backstory on why he thinks he's a good person, but he's very adamant on wanting this one certain council member there, and we don't really know why, but it's kind of comical how much he keeps going back to that because they us as the viewers, while he's describing his backstory, we get to see his backstory, but in the middle of his backstory sometimes he'll kind of break the fourth wall, if you will, because he'll be talking about wanting that council member to be there, but what we're seeing is his past. It's kind of a weird back and forth. um but eventually the council member gets there, and lo and behold, he is an eagle man. Because one thing you have to know about Dungeons and Dragons is that there's lots of creatures that are not human, right? So just kind of take that for what you will. Um, so they're very excited about this eagle man to be there, and I guess it's because Holga winds up throwing her potato that she's been eating at one of the guards and takes out another guard, and they essentially grab onto the eagle man and crash through the window. And it looks like they're about to crash to their death and plummet because the eagle's not flying, but eventually he flies and kind of gets them away. To explain that backstory that he was kind of explaining to the council, Edgin is a guy who fell in love, but wasn't really able to provide his wife with the lifestyle that they wanted to live. So he kind of became a little bit of a, or let me backtrack a little bit. At this point in time, when he's with his wife, he is a very honorable guy, and he is, for better or worse, kind of like a bounty hunter, if you will, or tries to take people into justice when they've done wrong. But he winds up stealing some gold from somebody that is able to track the gold back. And when he comes back to his home, he finds that his wife had been murdered by this group. And one of the group members, or people from that group, is actually right here on the upper corner of my screen. But the baby is safe that they had because she kept the baby kind of hidden in the wall, if you will. He takes this very hard, but Holga winds up finding him in a bar one day and kind of, through a non-romantical sense, kind of becomes friends and almost moves in with them, I believe, and like helps take care of the baby and helps him raise the child and stuff. But it's more like a friendship relationship than a romance. So that's kind of our two main characters' backstories, being Holga and Edgin. And those are played by Michelle Rodriguez and Chris Pine. So those are, I got Chris Pine in my background, and I think Michelle's in yours. But so that's kind of their backstory and why they. I missed the part where why they're in prison. Oh, okay. So, would you like to take it?
Yeah, they're so when uh you said his name is Edgin? So Edgin wanted to be able to provide more for his family, so he joins a group uh, where they're going to basically go into a place and steal a very, very valuable item. I believe it was, what was it called? It was like, it's a thing that brings people back from the dead.
Yeah, I don't remember the name of it, but they were trying to get like a whole bunch of treasure in addition to that item that brings people back from the dead.
Right. And he wanted it in particular so he could bring back his wife from the dead. So that's why he joined the group. And basically, when they get into the area, they get caught because I keep forgetting the name. When Edgin grabs I believe it's an amulet, he goes to walk away, and there's like a thin, very, very thin string, where when you get too far away, it breaks and it sets off basically an alarm slash trap. And then they all get into a little bit of a scuffle, but it ends up being where I think two of them get away, being, let's see, what were their names? Forge and what's the other lady's name?
Sophina.
Sophina. So
Sophina's the one who casts the spell to freeze time.
so Forge and Sophina, they make it out, but both Edgin and Holga are left behind, and that's how they end up getting in jail. Um, so what ends up happening is once Holga and Edgin get out of jail, and they escape, via the Eagle Dude. They're going back to see Forge and then see what's going on with this amulet, just in case they still had it, because Edgin like threw it to him right as he was getting caught. So they're going back to see Forge. It turns out that Forge is now a ruler of a big city, and what was her name again? Sorry, the Red Hood girl.
Sophina.
Safina. So Safina is like his it's not his wife, but advisor, second in command kind of person. Uh Back to
And
you.
they have his daughter there too.
Yep, they have uh Edgin's daughter. Back to you, Sarah.
All right, yeah. So they wind up being able to track Forge down and go to meet with him. Forge is kind of I'm gonna call him a little bit of a sleazeball. They thought that they could trust him. They wanted to get that tablet back. I couldn't find the name of the tablet, but it's a tablet that brings people back to the dead. Some sort of a like a tablet. Um, like a stone tablet. But anyway, so he wants to get his daughter back. He wants to get that tablet back so he can bring his wife back from the dead, since it's kind of his fault that she died. But Sophina is there to protect Forge, right? And so she basically traps Edgin and Holga in quicksand in the middle of the room through her spell casting abilities. And they get taken into the street, and they're about to be executed when Holga finds a way to distract the guard enough by talking about the sword or axe that he has, and is able to take them all out single-handedly, while Edgins is trying to cut the ropes that he's tied up with. It's actually almost kind of comical how much she's kicking butt, whereas he's barely doing anything at all. There's a lot of comedy sprinkled in throughout this movie, just as kind of like a side note. But they're able to break free and kind of go away for a while. Forge tells Edgin's daughter that he stole the tablet and just left her behind, trying to, trick her into thinking that her dad's worthless and doesn't want her, because that's how you manipulate a child into doing what you want, right? So fast forward a little bit, they want to figure out a way to steal the tablet back from the um from like the safe that it's in, if you will. And so I believe this is when they go to find Simon. He's the first one that they go to find. And Simon he's played by Justice Smith. who we've seen before in other movies like Detective Pikachu and whatnot. And so Simon is he is a I believe he's a sorcerer, which is a little bit different than a wizard, but he can still do spell casting abilities and whatnot. And so they find him as doing kind of like little parlor tricks while trying to secretly steal from the audience that the show that he's running. Uh, and he's somebody who isn't super confident in his abilities, and that kind of plays throughout the movie in terms of, needing his help throughout, but him not really being sure of himself and being able to be confident enough to help the amount that he needs. They're essentially at this point trying to form a team to be able to go and steal from Forge, right? And to steal the tablet back and to rescue his daughter. So Simon's the first one that they find. They decide that they need a druid who can do wild shape, which if you don't know what that is, it's essentially that you're a shapeshifter where you can shapeshift into any animal that you have seen before, if you have that special ability. Simon happens to know a druid that he can go find, and so they go to find her. This is where we see our first owl bear, which was pretty cool. She was one of the horses when they found her. She was a horse, and she rescued somebody that was about to be executed by turning into an owl bear and just totally kicking butt and taking out all the guards and then rescuing that person. She's very hesitant on wanting to help them. She's not really trusting of humans, which Edgin is a human. And but long story short, they convince her to help them because she was taken in as a young kid by this tribe, and the tribe does not have a good relationship with the town that they're going to steal from, that Forge is in charge of.
Yeah, because the town is doing a lot of deforestation. They're chopping down their home.
Yes. Yep. So the next step in kind of their hero's journey in trying to figure out what they need is that they decide that they need this special helmet to break a spell. And they find this out because the so the druid, her name is Doric. So she shapeshifts to be able to into like a fly to see where this safe is and that it's safeguarded by a special spell, and she understands what you need to be able to break that spell. She's able to escape but not undetected, so they do know that there's somebody trying to mess around with their jewels and their treasure, so they're kind of on high alert. But she's able to escape and talk back to our heroes group. They decide that they need this special helmet, but they're not really sure where to get this helmet because they heard the last time that this helmet had been seen was like over 100 years ago at some battle where a lot of Holga's family or ancestors had been a part of. Well, what you need to do at that point when you're trying to figure out how to get this helmet is that Simon can actually talk to the dead. He's able to bring them back to life just enough to ask them 5 questions, and then they are unrevived, never to be revived again. So on their way to this graveyard, at this point, Holga's somebody who she kind of helped Edgin back in the day because her husband was in the process of divorcing her and she didn't really have anywhere else to go. Um, but she hasn't really made peace with that yet. So on the way to the cemetery, she just happens to swing by his house, right? Because she wants to go talk to him about what's going on and whatnot. And the important part of this story is that she had given him a walking staff a long time ago, and he offered it back to her. So they make their peace. He's moved on with his life and is with somebody else now, but she gets this walking staff, and that'll be important for later. So then they get to the cemetery and they're able to ask these dead people a couple questions. There's a lot of comedy mixed in this part of it too. Uh, if you're only allowed 5 questions, does that count as one of my questions? And, Edgin's trying to ask the rest of this group, but the dead guy answers, which that means that takes away one of his questions. it just kind of goes back and forth a couple of times like that. But they talk to a whole bunch of people and find out that they need to go find this guy named Zank. Am I saying that right, you think?
Was that the oh, are you talking about the guy that takes him to the like
Underworld or
volcano
under
area?
yeah.
Um, sorry, I was trying to confirm whether a certain person was an actor or not, but it looks
It's
like
spelled
Zank.
Xenk.
Zank.
Zank, I think.
I had thought that the Holga's like ex-husband, I thought that was Bradley Cooper. So it looked a
Is it
lot
not?
like I searched his name on IMDb and like it doesn't come up. So that's why I'm very confused.
Strange. I thought that was him.
Do you remember what that character's name was?
No,
I don't
but
either, but
search if you search Olga's husband, it would probably pull up.
okay, I'll get to
Or
work on that
ex-husband.
because I for sure thought that's who that was, and it was like a cool little, oh, here's another very popular actor that we didn't show in the previews that's in the movie kind of a thing.
It definitely looked like him if it's not him.
Yeah.
But anyway, so they find out, through discussion amongst the group and talking to these dead people at the cemetery that they need to go find this guy named Zank. And Edgen is very unsure of this because he kind of thought that this guy was a jerk and that his people were not good people. But at this point, it's kind of like they're, it's this or we're giving up. So he goes along with it. Zank actually turns out to be a really cool dude. He's just a little extra literal and extra spiritual in a way that kind of makes the group uneasy or uncomfortable and is actually kind of comical in a way. Um, One of the examples of this is that Edgin's telling Holga he thinks that Zank has something up his sleeve, right? Which we know is just a common phrase. But Zank overhears him and he goes, "The only thing up my sleeve is my arm." And he's not trying to be like funny. That's just how literal he is. So it was pretty funny to see. Um, I,
So
I would not call this movie a comedy, but there are comedic things sprinkled in.
so it's not on IMDb about Bradley Cooper, but other sources are saying that it was Bradley Cooper. So it's really weird that a big actor like him isn't credited on IMDb in this movie. Really weird.
Yeah,
Sorry
yeah,
for the interruption, but thought I'd clarify.
that's all right. That's pretty strange that he wouldn't be credited like that, but uh, it was neat to see him as kind of like a little surprise, even though he was only in the movie for maybe 5 minutes tops.
Yeah.
But
He was
uh,
significant because he gave her the walking stick.
right, yes, yep. Um, so at this point, they're talking to Zank, and he is unsure of wanting to help this group because they basically straight up said they want the helmet so they can go use it to steal things. Because Holga is just a no nonsense kind of person. She tells it like it is, and that's what they're doing, right? Because they want to go steal from Forge. But they do have some honor in what they're thieving. All right, get it? Honor among thieves. That they are trying to help the townspeople, or Edgin agrees to give the treasure to the townspeople because really he just wants to rescue his daughter and get that one tablet back. Zank makes him swear on it and then agrees to help them. But the one place that this tablet is hidden is where nobody who wants to stay alive would ever go, which is in basically an underworld. So little scary, right? Going into the underworld where it's very dangerous.
It's
But
where we get the dungeon part of Dungeons and Dragons.
yes, yes, exactly. Um, so they go in there and they're able to find the helmet. But in the process of getting it, there's two kind of big things that happen, right? One is uh, can you find out what the Red Wizard's group name is? because they're not just called the Red Wizards, it's something else. But
Mm.
while he's looking that up, so there's a team of assassins from, I'm gonna call them the Red Wizards until we find out their real name. Um, it's Sofina's group, right? They're there to kind of take them out because she knows that they're up to no good. But while they're in the process of fighting, Zank is able to take them all out all by himself. But what he tells them is that they have to run, and they're like, "Well, what's the hurry?" And he goes, you can't kill the undead for very long." So they start coming back to life. But there is a different creature lurking in the background of the dungeon that then begins to chase them. And this is just this like massive, super fat dragon. Um, like
Eats
at one
well.
point, huh?
Eats well.
Yes, he definitely eats well for being stuck in some dungeon that nobody ever goes to. He is I mean, they're on these different platforms, and he's breaking chains that are holding these platforms up and rolling around. One thing that I forgot to mention that we find out through this is when they're in this cave or dungeon is that walking stick. So Simon actually recognizes that it's a hither thither, which is basically a teleportation staff. So he's able to create a teleportation between two different places, like a wormhole for you to go through one hole and come out the other. But it has to be two places that he can see. So they use that to their advantage. And between Edgin and Zank, they're able to uh, the dragon essentially takes out the Red Wizard group, but Edgin and Zank are kind of able to take out that dragon, or so they think, because it keeps coming back after them, even though they think it's dead. And at this point, they're kind of stuck in almost like, I'm gonna call it a closet, uh, like a hole in the cave wall, right? And so the dragon is filling the room with water because he's hitting the top of the room, and the water's coming in. And Simon uses a special spell to basically turn his finger into a lighter. So once there's enough water in there, they all go under the water, and I guess the gas that the dragon's breathing out is flammable. So Simon uses that lighter to light the breath of that dragon, turn it into a giant explosion, and they're able to escape from the dungeon with the helmet. Whew, all right.
They are called the Red Wizards.
Oh, they are.
Yeah.
Okay. It's the Red Wizards. I thought it was something more majestic than that, but I guess it's just the Red Wizards.
Yeah. I can cover the next little section here.
Go for it.
So now that they have the helmet, um, again, names. Uh, Simon. Now that they have the helmet, Simon has to become attuned to it, and just like any other magical like weapon or armor in D&D, it takes time to attune to it. And so, in the process of trying to attune to the helmet so that he can use the magical powers, he puts the helmet on, and there's this guy that uh, approaches him, and like the whole world around him looks like it's melting, so to speak. Like they're in a different time continuum, because time passes a lot slower, if that's what you want to say, compared to what it is in real time. Because like to but between the time he puts the helmet on and takes it off to the people that are not wearing the helmet looks like a split second, but we can clearly see that time is passing as he's talking to this figure that approaches him. And basically, Simon thinks that it's his great great grandfather, and the person is telling him that he is not worthy of the helmet, and basically keeps smacking him so that he falls and the helmet comes off of him. And so, after doing this repeatedly, Simon believes that he's not good enough to become attuned to the helmet. And so, that kind of riles up the group a little bit because um, Edgin is like, well, if you just keep trying, eventually it'll happen. And Simon's like, no, I can't do it. It's never gonna happen. And then Simon basically blurts out like, you knew this the whole time that I wouldn't be able to do this. You just didn't want to tell anybody, and then nobody have faith in the plan. And so this is kind of our little moment of the movie where people might disband and leave and pout, but they happen to come back together. They talk to each other and uh, basically say, "Well, if this isn't going to work, then let's just try something else." And they devise a plan where if they can't use the helmet to open up the vault, well, then maybe what they can use is the staff, which creates portals to be put on an expensive item that is being brought into the castle during the special games that they're hosting. That's kind of like Olympics or Hunger Games or Gladiator, stuff like that in the arena. But the people that are coming are giving riches to forge. So they believe, well, if we put the portal on a piece of art that's, very valuable, and they put the art piece in the vault where maybe the resurrection amulet is, I looked that up, then maybe they can basically just portal themselves into it because they can see the artwork. They can put that on there, and then they'd have to get it into like a carriage for uh, it to get into the city. So they go and they buy a piece of art from somebody, and they basically tear off, well, cut away the picture part of it, put the portal behind it, and then put some like really sticky stuff on the edges of the picture. So then what they do is they attach the picture to the bottom of a carriage that has a whole bunch of valuables in it that's being transported away into the castle, and they're trying to be very very secretive. So once they get the portal to open, so to speak, they remove the boards, and the girl, which her name
Doric.
Doric, she goes through the portal and into the carriage, and then basically gets after some shenanigans happening of didn't go as 100% according to plan, but eventually it does. She gets the piece of artwork into the um,
Carriage.
carriage, and then puts it aside. Puts the picture back on there so it looks normal, and then patches up the bottom of the carriage where they took the boards out to get into the carriage, and then she turns into a fly so that she can just zip away. Uh, yeah. What's next, Sarah?
So while they're working on this plan, um, they decide once they get there, because now they're heading to the town city, right? So they're gonna kind of work on several different plans all at once, if you will. They use a certain spell to trick the guards into thinking that Edgin's walking up playing his little what'd you call that instrument?
His jam session. We'll call it that.
It's like a little banjo, but it's not a banjo, right? A mandolin maybe? Kind of looks like a mandolin. But anyway, so they trick the guards into thinking that he's there, but Simon's shoe gets stuck, so he kind of is not fully concentrating on the spell, and uh, the illusion of Edgin gets really messed up, and the guards know that something's up. But our group's able to get into the castle walls just in the nick of time. You've got oh Edgin and Holga, I believe, try to go after, like, just straight on going on foot to try to find his daughter. Whereas Doric is trying to use. They set up their other portal on a table in like a upstairs of a tavern, right? But they find out that sorry, I missed this piece. They set up the other side of the portal in like the upstairs of a tavern, but they find out that the painting that they had secretly gotten into the castle in the treasure area had fallen onto a floor, right? So they have to carve away part of the floor and the other side of the portal. That way she can turn into a worm and get her way into the treasure area. So she's working on that. Edgin and Holga go off to try to find his daughter, and Simon tries to go after on foot towards um, the safe, if you will. They have a different name for where the treasure's held. What's the D&D term for a safe?
I would just call it a vault.
A vault. Yes, thank you. I don't know why I couldn't think of that name. Um, So he goes after that with the helmet, even though he's not attuned to it, because Edgin gave him this speech of basically, you're not able to do anything until you're forced to. So just go there and do it. And he puts the helmet on and he confronts the image of what he thinks is his grandfather. He punches him in the face and he finds out that really it's him basically saying, I wondered when you'd, actually do something about it and go after it. And they have these calling stones, which are kind of like walkie talkies, if you will, but they only work for an hour. So he tells everybody he's made it into the safe or the vault. But Doric also says that she's made it into the vault, and they clearly don't see each other. And so what's happening is that they realize that all the treasure is not actually going to the vault, but it's being boarded onto a ship because Forge is just trying to steal it all for himself and not really keep it in the vault. Dork gets knocked unconscious, and everybody else just gets taken by these like giant tentacle things. We've got Edgin talking to his daughter, so he thinks, and trying to convince her to come with him. But really, what it turns into is that it's Sophina trying to trick him. Um, Edgin discusses with Forge, saying, like, hey, at least give us the chance of living by letting us play in the games. Even though it's basically a death sentence to play in the games, let us at least have that dignity. Forge doesn't really want to, but Sophina says, sure, why not? At least give them that. So the whole group is at this point now ready to take part in the games. They have not been able to find Edgin's daughter or the amulet of resurrection, but this is their shot at trying to live still. So, do you want to discuss how the games went?
Yeah, it's basically like a big labyrinth, so to speak. And there is like a little cage looking thing that is at a checkpoint somewhere in the labyrinth. And so you have to make your way through the labyrinth without getting eaten by these. I know there's a D&D term for the name, but they're like Black Panthers, but with tentacles almost. Um,
Almost like giant Venus flytraps coming off of them. Bleh.
yeah, I apologize, D&D fans, that I don't know the name of it, but that's essentially what they are. But you're being chased by these things. There are little treasure chests throughout the labyrinth, so if you open it up, that there will be a weapon inside, so you can try to help defend yourself from these creatures. However, we do eventually see that one of them is a mimic, which is pretty cool. I believe it was Holga that found the mimic, and then
Describe what a mimic is for those who don't know.
looks like a treasure chest that actually is a creature. So when the chest opens, it's got like teeth and a tongue, and it takes on the shape of an ordinary object. And it is, in fact, not an ordinary object. It's a creature that wants to eat your face off. Um, Doric does find a sword in one of the treasure chests and ends up saving Holga. So the group gets back together and finds the cage that is like the checkpoint of surviving the labyrinth. But the problem is that uh, Edgin says, well, if we get in that checkpoint, then they're just going to make us do another game and another game and another game. Because really what's going on is they're just like the rich people of the city are betting on who can make it through different uh, sections of these games, and ultimately they're gonna die at some point. It's a never ending game. So Doric gets this idea because she saw like this. It looked like an ice cube that was more gooey, and if you like stick your arm in it, it like stings really bad. But they also noticed that the labyrinth, it doesn't just stay put. It like shifts and does different orientations. So I think it just goes away little by little as time goes on, so that one, maybe it'll be a little more clear where the labyrinth is heading towards, and two, if the walls come down, then the creatures can eat you faster. So they go back to this area, and what they do is they all dive into it. And even though it stings the entire time, eventually it goes down into the ground where um, Doric turns into a snake and slithers her way out from this gooey stuff. And then eventually she goes back to her normal being form and pulls the rest of the people out so that now they're underneath the arena, whereas where or which is where all the treasure is. And then eventually the treasure is being taken to the boat. So they go to the boat and they do find Edgin's daughter, which is really nice. But Forge also catches up to them, and Forge takes Edgin's daughter at knife point, basically saying, you know, you're not going to take my treasure. Uh, Even though, really, I think at the end of the day, all Edgin really wanted was that resurrection tablet. But essentially, after he's trying to give his little monologue to everybody, Holga sees a stack of potatoes and she picks one up and chucks it at his face and gets a direct hit. Probably rolls a crit 20 or a crit 20, whatever that is.
Natural 20.
Natural 20, critical hit. Um, and he lets go of the daughter, and then they are able to grab the daughter, and uh, Simon does some magic to create some tidal waves that helps push them out to sea and getting away from Forge. So they have all the treasures, they have the amulet that they've been looking for, and they're taking off out in the open sea. And honestly, I thought maybe this was where they were going to end it, but they look back and Holga's like, what the heck is that? And there's like these red looking vine things coming from the sky, coming down in the city. And what's happening is, uh, oh, I forget her name already again.
Sophina.
Sophina, sorry. Sophina, part of the Red Wizards, she's trying to do some sort of ritual thing to be able to bring back her master, which we do see very, very briefly earlier on in the film. Him talking to her, and what she needs is a whole bunch of sacrifices.
She's trying to turn the people into an army of the undead.
Right. And the problem is that they see her and they all get scared, so they decide to run away. Um, the Our group of heroes turn the ship around and decide that they're gonna go help. So not only are people scared, but there's also one other thing because Edgin says to Simon, "How far away do you have to be able to use your portals?" Basically, and he says about a quarter mile. And there's like this big hot air balloon up in the sky with Forge's face on it, and they use a portal between the balloon and the ship, and they're basically funneling all the different treasures into this portal so they pour out onto the streets and people are leaving the arena to go get the riches, which was one of the promises that Edgin made to, was it Zerk?
Zank
Zake? Zerk? Whatever. Um, Zinc. Yeah, sorry.
is not
One of the
Buzz Lightyear.
Yeah, one of the promises he made to him was to give riches back to the people, and this is how he's fulfilling it. And so they get back to the city, they make their way through a handful of the streets, and they meet Zafina out on the streets, and they have a little bit of a face-off. This is where we see in the trailer that Safina turn or like she shoots magic, and Holga's like, or someone says she missed, and Holga says no, no, she didn't, and it turns the stone dragon into a real dragon that's they have to fight as well. Which I really appreciated this fight scene because um, what we know from Dungeons and Dragons is that there's some of these spells that you can only have continuously going on as long as you don't break concentration. And one of the ways that or well, actually, the way that this dragon ended up being stopped was them breaking her concentration. I think it was Doric, like shot something at her or something,
Yeah, I think she shot her with her slingshot.
uh, which stopped the dragon. And then uh, she Zafina uses the same magic that she used to basically stop time and stop everybody to like when Edgin and Holga were caught for trying to steal in the very beginning of the movie. This is what stopped them from leaving was Zafina's magical ability to just make people freeze in time, kind of like Kylo Ren's force ability in Star Wars. Um, and what's interesting is everybody is frozen. Seems like things are gonna, be very, very bad for them. And Zafina starts to morph a little bit. She's looking very, very scary, so to speak. She's looking more and more like her master. And she goes up to Edgin's character and starts talking really close to him. And he starts moving and shows that he's saying that she has some very bad breath. And she's taken off guard, like, how are you able to move? And what happened is Edgin's daughter, she long ago when she was a child and helping Edgin and Holga be successful thieves, is she has an item that turns her invisible. And so she used that item to be able to put like this wrist thing on Zafina. I didn't quite catch what that was.
So this is kind of a twofer, right? Simon was able to counter the spell to stop time, which he wasn't successful for before and didn't think he was able to, and kind of played dumb this time because he actually was able to stop time. But then Edgin's daughter put that bracelet on her, which they were using those bracelets on the players in the like Olympic games. Um, and that bracelet prevents you from being able to use magic.
Ah, gotcha. No, it makes sense to me too. And that basically is what kind of like crumbles her. Um, After all that happens, we find out that one of our characters during the battle um, took a
Before
deadly blow.
before that, I just want to say Dork turned into an owlbear again and just
Oh,
annihilated Sophina. Like full on fist pow 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 to the point where it was, at least for me, I thought it was pretty funny just how many times she was trying to hit her.
I feel like they said something like, I think she's dead already. And then she like goes
I think
back
that's
to it
enough.
and smacks her some more and throws her into a building and has the like rocks crumble over her. Um, so she
But
appears to be dead.
yes.
Um, but we do see that one of our heroes has been impaled uh, to a deadly degree, which is Holga. She is laying up against, I think, a fountain or something, and she's basically trying to, make people not feel so sad. She's glad that if she were to die, she was going to die a hero, and uh, she sings one of the songs that her and Edgin always sang together. And then, as she dies is when she stops singing. And so um, the reason why that Simon can't help her is because she was stabbed by a weapon of the Red Wizards. There's a special ability or power within those weapons where magic can't help from healing. So we have a decision to make. And as she dies, Edgin kind of remembers, like, I'm trying to bring my wife back so that my daughter can see who her biological mother was because she never truly got to meet her. However, Holga's been kind of her mother this whole time. She's the one that helped raise uh, his daughter and was arguably the mother to his daughter. And so he decides to use the amulet of resurrection on Holga instead of going to find his wife's dead body. And Holga is brought back to life. And then basically everybody lives a happy ending. That's about it. There is one after credit scene, which isn't very. dire to see. Basically, when they were asking questions of the dead or undead for the 2 minutes they were alive to give answers to their questions, one of the dudes that they left behind, they only asked four questions and not a fifth question. So until he answers that fifth question, he can't go back to rest. So the post credit scene is him saying like, "Is anybody gonna ask me that last question?" So, all right. I think we covered the movie pretty well. Um, I would say I was very, very uh, happy with the movie. I thought it was good. It was interesting. It was fun. It reminded me of the fun that we had in our Dungeons and Dragons group with all the mischief that we got into. It didn't seem like it was too serious. It knew that it wasn't going to be like a serious movie, so they didn't lean hard into that. They had a good balance between trying to accomplish their objective and the comedic relief. Um, Probably one of my favorite comedy parts that we actually didn't mention was when they were going to find the helmet. They were like up against a wall, and these creatures were walking by that were like brains, and they said that it's okay. They only attack people that are like super smart, and they just passed by them without even acknowledging the people. So they were like, well, that's rude. Because the monsters thought they were too stupid to be able to attack. One thing I will say about this movie that was a little off-putting to me was when I watched the trailer, I thought that the Red Wizards would have more of an impact in this movie as far as being like the villain, but I felt like the movie focused mostly on Forge, and then the Red Wizards got snuck in at the end of the movie, whereas they weren't like a focus of the movie. Did you kind of feel that way?
Yeah, I suppose so. Just that the Red Wizards were kind of more of a background villain and using Forge as a front.
Yeah, because like watching the previews, I wouldn't have thought of Forge of being like the main bad guy. I know we see in the previews the scene where he's like, I'm not gonna watch you die, so I'm gonna go in the hallway or whatever it was he said. So to me, he seemed more like, I don't know, like a just a gangster or warlord type person that was a side character, but turns out he's like the point of the movie. So I don't know. I think I would have rather the Red Wizards have been the main villain, and I wish we would have saw more of Safina's master, just because when we saw him, I thought he was pretty cool. Um, but he's only in the movie for all of maybe 2 or 3 minutes. So maybe they will have more of an emphasis on a second movie, because I guarantee this movie is going to be super successful. Um, I can't speak for all the people, but I know I've seen that I believe what's his name? I know his last name is Smith. Justice Smith and Michelle Rodriguez. I know the two of them are huge Dungeons and Dragons fans. So you can tell that a lot of love went into this where maybe, they were told who their character was, and then they just were like showing up to set playing D&D, so to speak. So I think that's what really projected from each of their performances because of their love of Dungeons and Dragons in general, and it really paid off, in my opinion. What do you think?
One plot point that we kind of missed at the very end there was just that as Forge was trying to run away with one of these like
Oh yeah,
giant palaces or something, was that Zank found him in the forest and was able to bring him back to justice. And he he basically did the same thing that Edgin tried to do with trying to grab the Eagle Man and trying to break through the window, except that the window isn't there anymore. It was curtains hiding a brick wall, and so he was able to. They did not accept, or rather, they did deny his pardon, so he's going to stay in prison for at least another year. Um, I really liked the movie. I thought it was really fun. I thought the pacing was pretty good. They had a really good balance on different character types, and for the most part, you could really pick up on what character types they each were if you know D&D, and if you don't, really it just gives you a good diversity of characters, which makes it a bit more fun. So it's not just all like they weren't all barbarians, where they're all super strong. You've got Helga was a barbarian. She was super strong. Sophina being the wizard, Simon being a sorcerer, so they're, being able to use magic and whatnot. Zank was a paladin, which is kind of more of a spiritual being, if you will, and kind of has a higher intelligence than most typical characters. Adgin being kind of a classic bard with being able to use his instruments to both distract people. And at one time, I think he actually used it to hit somebody, which is pretty funny to see. I really appreciated the amount of action that was in this movie and the amount of comedy. It seemed to be very well balanced and not overkill in either category. Uh, there really isn't a whole lot that I have to be nitpicky about this movie with. The difference in villains compared to the preview isn't something that necessarily bothered me, in part because it's been a while since I've seen the preview and I didn't really focus on the villain as much as just the other characters because I didn't recognize the actors of the villains. And so it's just kind of, to me, it's more of they got to defeat some bad guys, whether whoever they are. Um, but overall, I thought it was a pretty solid film. And the death scene of Holga at the very end, it got to me a little bit.
It
So
was
if it gets to you, don't worry, that's normal.
it was gripping. I felt for it too. I thought it was
Yeah.
good. So here's the big question, because clearly the two of us, like the movie. Do you think someone that has no knowledge of Dungeons and Dragons would enjoy the movie?
If you like movies that are adventurous or comedy, but not super in your face comedy, because I would not call this movie a comedy, but it does have a lot of comedic pieces. And if you'd like, I think I already said adventure, but I mean more like action type movies. This is kind of like a combination of all of those. And if you don't have any D&D knowledge coming into this movie, there's definitely going to be some things that you don't pick up on, like, for example, the mimic. That's a creature that we know it's a mimic, but they don't say in the movie it's a mimic. And so, us kind of knowing that that's a thing that happens, um, because of Dungeons and Dragons, because we've encountered that before. As somebody who doesn't know D&D, you probably wouldn't understand that that's what that is. Uh, but I don't think that that really breaks from being able to understand the story. I think that they balance things out enough and explain things enough that you can have no D&D knowledge before seeing this movie and still be able to have a good time. Would you agree?
I think so too. I also think, like, let's say you know nothing about Dungeons and Dragons. I think it's a very good way to show people that if you want to try Dungeons and Dragons, that, it's not all super serious, devising weird warlord plans, or, just thinking you have to be super nerdy. I don't think there was anything super nerdy even about this movie. It was just, a world with magic and humans, creatures, whatever. And it was just a good story and a good setting. And it shows that you can, take that to the game. That's exactly what, when we play Dungeons and Dragons, it's exactly what happens. There's probably a mission that could be really serious, but there's one or two people in the group that really throw a wrench into something, whether it's, just being a smart mouth, or, just picking on each other, whatever it is. It brings to the light what kind of fun you can have with the game. And so I think this movie, if you were to watch it and then maybe go and try it, it's a great way to do it.
Like when Zank was describing the stone bridge and how you had to step on certain stones when they were in the dungeon trying to get the helmet. He was being very technical on how you have to step on certain stones, but not these stones, and in this order, and Simon just casually accidentally steps on a stone and the whole bridge collapses before they even get to try going across the bridge.
Yeah.
Like there was a very serious plan and then it just all went to crap.
Yeah. So a lot of cool things like that. We could probably go on and tell you about some of the fun stuff that we've done, but this discussion would get way too long. That'd probably be a separate video. Um, all right. Well, if you enjoyed this type of video, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. We are trying to get a lot more video discussions out for you this year because that is one thing that you guys all spoke up about of what you'd like to see more of. So, again, turn on notifications. That way you're notified when more movie discussions drop. Drops a like if you like the video and drops a comment letting us know if you saw the movie, what'd you think of it? And also, what fun have you had with the game Dungeons and Dragons? And then, as always, everybody, thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.